it's not just about in a straightforward way telling them the story. It's about telling them some of the story in a way that excites them enough to want to hire you. Coming out of theater, I'm so interested in like, how do we figure it out? What's the idea? What is the purpose of the thing we're making? Why are we making it? And so that would always be stuff that I
all wrong impulses to sell a movie.
That would all be stuff that I would talk about, and people would be like, well, he doesn't know. He doesn't know.
Hi, Colby. How are you, man?
Hi, I'm good. How are you doing?
So we have a very unusual episode today because Helen couldn't make it. We have a segment called Proof of Life, and she just gave me her proof of life. So she's alive, but under the weather. And so she had to pull out last minute, which is okay because I'm well prepared for this and a big fan of your work. But before we go any further, I'm going to read what I wrote about you because I want to embarrass you in front of your friends. So very special guest today. Colby Day is a Los Angeles-based writer and a director whose work blends, I think, big ideas with emotional depth. Do you like that?
I love it.
His screenplay In the Blink of an Eye landed on the 2016 Blacklist and now is on Searchlight feature. It's a Searchlight feature directed by Andrew Stanton. He also co-wrote Spaceman, which I love, and I want to talk about that, for Netflix, starring Adam Sandler, no less. And beyond his screen work, Colby writes Hollyweird, a sharp, listen to this, sharp, heartfelt newsletter about the strange reality of making art in Hollywood. I think it's equal parts therapy session and industry dispatch, which is incidentally kind of what we do here in You're Not Gonna Make It, is trying to lick our wounds.
Well, it's a battle. It's a constant battle, so it makes sense.
Hopefully not an uphill battle. And I think that Colby has become essential for reading for anyone fascinated by the like weird, strange mechanics of Hollywood that we're all under. If you're listening to the podcast right now, you're probably part of a group of up-and-coming filmmakers that we try to cater to. So yeah, man, I think that, and I write this, like I culminate my speech saying that for me, you represent this kind of Hollywood creator who's not afraid of cultivating an audience and connecting directly to people through new channels. So I think that's very exciting and part of what I wanted to talk to you today.
Yeah.
How are you?
I'm good, man. What a good intro. I feel like I have to re-listen and copy it so I know how to describe both myself and my newsletter. Because when people ask what it is, I'm like, I don't know. It's what I do every week and also how the business is weird.
Listen, it's crazy because I think part of what touches us all is I got to know you because of your newsletter. I don't know who recommended it to me, Hollyweird, but I loved how candid you are and how open you are about like the actual things that are happening in your life. You're very accomplished, but you're not bragging about it. And I think that is very refreshing that you are actually telling us about the ups and downs of creating things right now in Hollywood. So I like that.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, it's interesting because when I moved to LA in 2016, I came out from New York where I went to college, but I sort of went back and forth for a year, and I would listen to, like script notes or like other stuff that was like, how do I even learn about what Hollywood is like? And there's something about listening to the people who are very established and started to work in like the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, where it just is like, none of that exists anymore. Like, as much wisdom as you may have about the business, like none of that stuff is how it is to start anymore. And so I really felt unprepared for like what it would be like. And it all was sort of a mystery. And anytime I had to do something, it would be the first time I was doing it. My manager would be like, they want a one-pager. And I'd be like, what is that? And that happened over and over and over. And so when I, first wrote a sort of like end of year, first thing I wrote and published that was like, here's how my career is, was like an end of year. Like, here's everything I did all year. Is this normal? And I really did that just selfishly to like hear from other people does it work like that? Because I think especially when you're doing feature film, like you don't ever interact with other people doing it. You interact with like the people you want to hire you or the or directors or like you're never actually interacting with your peers. So it was really rewarding to get to start to write stuff and hear from other people. Oh yeah, it is like that. That has been my experience. Has been really cool. And so it has been nice to kind of try to pay forward like the stuff I wish I had known 10 years ago because nobody tells you. And I don't feel like school even taught me. You know, I went to school for writing. I went to school for writing, but the business part is just so different. And I think if I had been like a producing student, maybe I would have learned more, but it just felt so foreign to me as someone who like went to college and then wrote plays to come to Hollywood. So I'm really happy to hear that it works for you and you like it, and happy to come on the podcast because it felt like you guys do a similar thing a little bit. Just how is it? How do we do this?
Yeah, completely. It's funny that you mentioned first the careers of people that came before us in an industry that is changing so much. I characterize that as like the light of a dying star, that you get to see something. You get to
that's not even exists anymore. It's been gone for a millennia.
But we still but the light is still shining on us, and we are pretending to extract some wisdom of an industry that does not exist anymore. It's like almost like trying to understand the inner workings of the, I don't know, metal forging in the 1900s. It's like, you could extrapolate probably like will and great. There's some universal human values there, but probably that's not going to be applied to this industry. And then you specifically said something about one pagers, and I love that because one pagers are, for those who are not writers, are a fundamental tool, right? Like we are exposed on the internet to final screenplays, and we don't really know if those screenplays that we have access to on the web are actually edited after the fact that the movie got awards or the movie was shot, right?
Right.
Rarely. And I think the Safdie brothers are a good example. I think they've done, I think that also the guys, the Daniels from Everything Everywhere, famously published the actual screenplay that they took into production, not the screenplay that came out of the editing of the movie.
Yes.
But on top of that, we don't have access to those one pagers. And the one pagers, for those who don't know, are important because those are the tools that people actually read from your work, from your proposal, right? And those are nowhere to be found. So when you get a one pager, like your manager sends you a one pager, you put it in that Dropbox folder because it's like you're treasuring that as like an important tool of information. Right.
So and they're also they're also not even one page. That's the crazy thing. Like, so there's all this stuff in Hollywood where you're told like you're going to go meet this person, and then nobody gives you any context as to do what, to talk about what, like what kind of movies do they make, and so you just have to like Google like what do I talk about with this company? Yeah, one pager. I early on in like moving here, you're going on that general meeting with somebody, and they, you know, if they have a book or something, often there's sort of a step of like, what would your take be on this? Or if you come in with like an idea and you're sort of like, I have this crazy idea, and you know, this guy does this crazy thing and this would be the movie. Often the next step is them sort of being like, we'd love a one pager. And then I would leave that meeting and be like, I don't know what they want. Like what? I don't know how to do that. So I would have to call my manager and be like, I don't know what that is.
Send me some one pagers.
Do you have any? Can you send me some? And then they will send you a couple examples of stuff that they have, but it's sort of like, these were good, these were bad. And you're sort of like trying to parse out like, what should it even be? But, you know, essentially the one pager is like, here's the log line of the movie potentially. Here's what the world is. Here's the characters. And like, very broadly, maybe this is the story. And everybody calls them a one pager, and I've never written one in one page because it's not possible to do that. I think 2 to 3 pages is a reasonable one pager, but it just sort of is one of those Hollywood things. And then the next step you would probably need to do, I'm trying to think because I haven't done this in a little while now, but like, you know, then people want some version of like a more fleshed out treatment. And again, a treatment is another thing where like, I don't, what do these look like?
In terms of the treatment, because I think that sometimes treatments fall into the trap of being too plot driven, because it feels like
Yes.
The prose of a treatment is such a different beast than the prose of a screenplay, right? Because you have to be literary on a treatment in a way to convey ideas, because you're trying to compress.
Yeah.
So you use you use ellipsis, you use a lot of resources that you wouldn't usually do on a screenplay. So it's a different muscle.
Yes. And what nobody really, maybe people warned me and I didn't listen, but what I didn't feel warned about was that none of these documents are just the version of the document that does that job, right? Like a treatment technically just tells you what would happen in the movie. That's the job of a treatment. However, the secret job of the treatment is convincing someone to buy the movie. It's not to tell them the story of the movie. So I think there's this disconnect of like the document is for this, but there's this sort of business side, which is like, actually it's not just about in a straightforward way telling them the story. It's about telling them some of the story in a way that excites them enough to want to hire you. And
that's fascinating.
That again was a like, coming out of theater, I'm so interested in like, how do we figure it out? What's the idea? What is the purpose of the thing we're making? Why are we making it? And so that would always be stuff that
all wrong impulses to sell a movie.
That would all be stuff that I would talk about, and people would be like, well, he doesn't know. And so it took a really long time to learn like, oh, I can be excited about questions, but like, these documents are sales documents, and every step of the way, it's a sales document. It's just a sales document to a new person.
It's so hard to separate tools that are conducive to writing and tools that are conducive to actually selling. Because of course, like an outline can be an important tool for a writer to actually understand a path for writing a screenplay, but then that would be completely wrong to show. Even a manager would get scared.
Oh my God. Yes. I cannot. Again, and I've made the mistake of like, here's the outline. And then people are like, what?
Yeah. They fall asleep because it's plot. It's like a thick plot. It's like everything is plot. It's so hard.
And a lot of my outlines, by virtue of like just what excites me, are questions. Like I get excited by like, maybe something like this. And like that works for me as an artist in an outline. But that is not appealing as like the people whose job it is to read the outline. And so I don't know. I think starting what I like about your guys' podcast and what I hoped to do in starting my newsletter was like talk about all this stuff that is a little bit like unspoken rules of the road. I think there's a lot of like things that the business people take for granted that the artists don't even know to think about. And, film is such like a marriage of commerce and art. And, I think a lot of us come in with like, we love the art and now we're fighting against the commerce. And there is a way to make those two work together, but it takes like rewiring your brain and learning a new language a little bit.
I love that. I mean, yeah, 100%. And I think that learning the business side of things, especially for those who are not scolded by their managers because maybe they're not represented yet, it's very tough because you have your understanding and it's very skewed by interviews you see online and things like that. And it's not really conducive to have I wouldn't even say a career, but just simply to get things done and create things out there, right?
I understand how it even is supposed to work, right? Because I think what works to make it is different from what works to convince people to make it. Like there are just different gaps in like what is the purpose of the document and what is the purpose of this step. And I think it's hard to wrap your head around unless you are fortunate enough to know someone who is a year or two ahead of you in your career, because then you can ask them. And when I first moved here, I had a couple people who were just like doing it at the same time, and we would just text each other and be like, "How have you ever done one of these?"
Support is a support
what is
system.
that? Yeah.
Okay, so in the spirit of not turning this into an interview, just an interview, I'm gonna follow our usual structure.
Yeah, to do the show.
So I consider you today. I'm not considering you just like there's an interview, but I'm considering you a co-host. So the first thing we do in the podcast is, and I will ask more questions, but is to do a section called Proof of Life. And Proof of Life is basically telling me, Colby, how are you? How are you holding up?
I'm
this week. How do you feel
this week? I'm really, really tired this week.
Okay.
Which is, comes from good stuff. Like I'm working, which is great. I'm working on a TV show, which is great. I'm writing a movie, which is great. But am doing both those things at the same time, which is a little bit insane. So I'm doing really good in like a career sense, but I am very tired this week. It's catching up to me because it's now, 6 weeks of this. So it's
Yeah. How do you manage burnout in your life? And you talk about this in this newsletter, I know, but tell us a little bit. How do you manage to not burn out and not to work so much one day that the next day you just say can't focus?
Yeah, that's a really hard question to answer because I do not know. I mean, I think I used to work before I was exclusively working writer, I worked in sales. And I think what was really nice about that was it kind of taught me to like work really fast and because it was all just commission-based job. And so you would try to do the job as fast as you could and like make 10 sales and then you could be done in 2 hours. And so I kind of approach my writing in the same way. Like I try to go as fast as I can so that it's not all day. Like if I was going to work on the show and then coming home and like working all night, that would burn me out. I try to do like, I'm going to sit down and sprint for 45 minutes and then that's it. I'm done and I'll watch a dumb TV show.
You write every day?
I try to write almost every day. Yeah. When I'm in the groove, I do. But I think part of the like burnout calculus to me is I'm taking a day off currently just because I'm tired every week. So
No, for sure.
Yeah. How do you handle burnout? Because I don't know that I know the answer.
The thing is, like, I'm a director mainly. And so directors are tasked with managing a lot of projects mostly. And then because I write as well, but I write because I have to. If you tell me tomorrow I don't have to write anymore, because like I wouldn't feel good. But if you tell me like you're gonna be doing this 2 scripts in the next 4 years, so you're not gonna be writing, I don't think I will be too conflicted. I'll be sad, right? If I love the writing and I can have a saying on notes or something. So to me, burnout can come from different places because I'm juggling a lot of balls. But I know my limit, so I know that if I cross through a threshold of work, the next day I'm going to be on this zone that I can't really focus. But that's a physiological thing of a 44-year-old person. That didn't happen to me when I was 10 years ago, when I was 34. Yeah. So it's a new thing. And in a way, a thing that is a double-edged sword, like anything in this cases, which is in one way, I can't go beyond, like I used to pull an all-nighter and just like get things done at 4 a.m. In the other hand, I think it just helps my mental health knowing that, okay, this is a natural physiological barrier. I can feel my body too exhausted. Let's move on to, watch a dumb TV show. And then next day, we'll do some exercise and then get back to it.
Yeah. I've always been very able to be like, the all-nighter is a bad idea. Like even in high school, I was the kind of student who was like, I would be better off going to bed and waking up too early than like try to do it all night. There is something, I do think I have a good internal compass of like, I've hit the wall and it's no longer useful to keep doing this. So I do think like hearing your own momentum, or like sensing your own inertia of like, nope, this is no longer good. I was shooting, my wife is directing a documentary and we were shooting something the other day and it was late at night and it just like, we shot one last thing and I could just tell like, oh, everybody's tired. This is, we need to just stop now. Like we could keep going and never get it again, like we're done. The day's over. So I think just knowing like
that's healthy.
When to call it is a good muscle to have.
I agree. I mean, it's important to hear yourself, and especially as you professionalize your career, like that's the only sustainable way to go about it, because otherwise you're risking actually not making it to the next phase of a project. Like projects are so long that sprinting is rarely important. But I think that I get stuck with like the most intensity comes from deadlines and pitching, like things like that. Like you're pitching to someone and you're preparing this pitch. And so that is a lot of work condensed in a very small timeline that is unlike anything else in film where you usually going to be about it, like rewriting for 3 years. But then somehow a pitch creates this sense of opportunity and tension that forces you get tempted to work on short deadlines and burnout. Absolutely. I think, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
The sense of possibility and opportunity could destroy you.
Yeah. The chase, I think, is the hardest part to sort of wrap your head around and also like give up on when it's over, like release the energy of, is very challenging. I just feel like my proof of life has taken over the show. Do you do one?
No, it's an excuse. Do it. My proof of life. Yes.
What's happening for you this week? I don't want to derail as your temporary co-host.
So I'm not writing.
Okay.
So I've been stalling the writing. I need to finish the first vomit draft of the screenplay, and I've been so busy with so many other things that I've been pushing and pushing and pushing. I started working with a script consultant only to force me to write. So it's almost like I call her a dominatrix, because it's like I'm paying her to have a deadline, and
yell at you when you fail. Yeah.
And I failed twice now to give her the third act. I like, my brain doesn't want to let go of this thing. But I already know that the challenging thing is I already know all the things that this is not yet. Like the vomit draft is almost done, and I also already see all the problems with it. So I'm going to be, I already know that, it's another 3-4 months ahead of me to rewrite this thing, and that will be the most difficult thing. So stalling writing. So I've started with all the things I'm not doing. I am doing an animation short film, and it's, I've been doing animation. My work is animation and live action mixed together. And I know very well that animation takes time, and it needs a lot of patience, but I'm reminded and humbled every time I do it.
Yes.
And so it's crazy, but I'm slowly finishing that project. And then finally, my short film, Border Hopper, was premiered last year, is in the long list for the Oscars. So we're starting a PR campaign to get in the short list, which is the mountain that is most difficult to climb, right? Going from about 160 shorts that are in the long list to 15, which is like an insurmountable task, because of course it requires very specific PR techniques just to force this coveted group of voters to select the short and put it in the short list. So it's just very, very hard, but we're hopeful, and we're, excited. So we're starting that process. So those are I think that's the proof of life. This is my updates.
That's very exciting. And yes, if you've never worked on the campaign to try to get to the next step of the awards contenders list, it is the craziest. It is the craziest job in the world. It's so weird.
Tell me about it. Like, I want to hear your experience. What experience did you have that you're referring to? Like,
I have only seen it from afar. No, Spaceman, which I wrote, was a Netflix movie, and Netflix, I think, selects sort of, here's the 3 movies we're really gonna prioritize for awards, and then every other movie is sort of like, we'll put a billboard up and see you later. But no, my wife works in documentary film, Emma Miller, and she has done that sort of work for short films. She co-produced this film, Knife Skills, that was nominated for an Academy Award a few years ago. That was a documentary short, and the amount of energy and time and effort that go into the machinery and money of how do we get the people who vote about this stuff to see it is pretty wild. Yeah. So I don't know firsthand. I only get to see it from afar and be like, whoa, but the business, this is crazy.
Tell me about Spaceman, because let me tell you, I love that movie because it was so unusual in that it really was thinking out of the box for the way that it went about. And it feels so contained, but at the same time so emotional, and has such a weird, crazy twist.
It's a crazy
movie.
How did
that happen? How the fuck did that happen?
You're asking that.
Thank you for making it happen, I guess. Those two things at the same time.
That's very sweet. What a crazy thing that movie exists at all. It feels like we robbed a bank a little bit.
It did.
Yeah, we did. I had met Michael Peretz, who was the producer of that movie, just in a general meeting when I first moved to LA. And I think I told him, I didn't really know how to do those meetings. And so I think what I told him was whenever you have something that's really crazy and really hard to figure out, that's probably the thing that I'm going to want to do, which was maybe not the best way to pitch myself, but he read the book, Spaceman of Bohemia. Someone had sent it to him and told him, I'm not sending this to you because I think it's a movie. I'm sending it to you because it's a really beautiful book. You should just read this book. And then, of course, as any good film producer does, he read it and was like, but shouldn't it be a film? So he kind of did the same thing to me. He was like, I think you'll just like this book. And I read it and really loved it. And I think, I don't know if this has been your experience, but when you get sent stuff to consider, like, would you want to work on this? By virtue of not being a very important artist, a lot of the stuff that I get sent is kind of like fine. It's stuff that nobody else wanted to do usually. And so this was maybe the first thing in my career that I'd been sent where I was like, this is a beautiful piece of art. And if I got to work on this, I am set. Like, I don't have to do very much. It's already really good. So we pitched it to Tango, which is like an independent financier.
But first, you wrote a one pager.
That's great. Yeah, I'm skipping the one pager. I did write a one pager. I wrote a one pager for, who did I write it for? Michael and I talked about it, and we're just like, this is a beautiful book. How could it be a movie? How would it be a movie? And could it be a movie that was really small? That was sort of the brief, right? Because the book is even bigger than the movie. There's more going on. There's more of the history of the Czech Republic, which is all beautiful and really what makes the book so special. But the brief was sort of like, could this be a Moon level independent film? You know, like it a lot of it is one guy alone in a spaceship.
Moon is the movie Moon. Sean, what's his name?
Yes, Duncan Jones directed with Sam Rockwell. So Sam Rockwell's the lead. He's alone on the moon for the whole movie. And talks to a robot. And so it is a very good sort of like comparison of like, oh, Spaceman is a guy alone in a spaceship, and sometimes he's talking to Earth, but they're not there. And he, in the movie, believes that there's an alien on board the ship with him and comes to meet the alien, and they become sort of buddies. But that felt manageably small, you know, like it had big ideas, but a small canvas. And so I wrote a sort of like pitch for it, and we went to Tango, who I don't even think I really pitched it to them. They just sort of asked me questions like, what do you like about the book? What would you do differently? It was the most casual pitch I've ever had to do. And then they sort of were like, okay, well, you should do it. And I was like, oh, okay. Like basically in the room, like, we want to do it. So you guys should do it. Let's figure it out.
Did you spoil from that experience a little bit? It was like, this is how it works.
The first two jobs I had in Hollywood were book adaptations. And I think because they were crazy books, they were both crazy science fiction books. I think it was just sort of a like, I don't know, man. If you say it could be a movie, let's see. It's not like I was being paid a tremendous amount. I was brand new to Hollywood, and I was like, yeah, there's a movie. So I do think I got really spoiled. And then after that, I pitched on movies for a year and a half and got none of them. But I wrote a draft with that in mind of like, let's do a really small movie. And then Johan Renck, our director, who had just done Chernobyl, found out we had a space script and wanted to do something that was less historical and less like the real world. I think he wanted something that was sort of magical and strange, and it sort of fit his goals. And then he and Sandler were on the awards circuit at the same time because Uncut Gems had come out. And so they had dinner just at like some party one night, and Sandler asked him like, what are you doing next, man? Chernobyl's so cool. And Johan was like, a space thing. And Sandler's like, I want to go to space. Send it to me. And we all were sort of like, what? Like, it's about a Czech astronaut. We did not think Adam Sandler at first. So he wanted it and followed up to read it. He followed up about like, I really want to read it. And so we sent it to him, and he liked it, which is crazy. And it kind of snowballed from there. It started as a very small.
How does Netflix get on board? Like at what point Netflix gets in the picture?
Sandler, it's all virtue of Sandler, right? Like Sandler has a deal there. Netflix was not originally part of it, so it would have been a more like traditional indie equity model where we kind of raised the money for the script and then raised more money for the movie and then sell the movie. But when Sandler signed on, it sort of like morphed into, well, kind of the only way to pay for this whole thing would be if it became part of Sandler's deal at Netflix, because he just has a deal where his movies are part of the thing and they pay for it. And so, you know, I was not like in the negotiation of how or why it became that, but it became sort of like a, well, let's add this into the Sandler cinematic universe of Netflix. And then it became a Netflix movie. Yeah.
when a movie takes off like that, and then suddenly it's distributed by Netflix before it even goes to festivals or anything,
Yeah.
like how do you know the impact that it had? Like, did you had any reference point of if people are watching, or if it has an impact in culture? Like, how does that work
I'll never know.
for you?
I'll never know. No, the one thing it premiered at Berlin, which was cool and meaningful and
Great festival.
yeah, really cool. And then, the weird thing about being on Netflix is it opens internationally everywhere at the same time. And so the producer, the only way I knew it had like a cultural impact was the producer just started sending me TikToks from like Brazil and Mexico and Argentina of Hanush the spider from the movie. They were like Brazilian dubs that people were making on TikTok. And I was like, whoa, this is crazy.
Crazy.
So it's a very weird, like, the reception is sort of like totally divorced from you, but then it is happening somewhere and you just aren't seeing it. It's a really weird way of releasing a film to just sort of
It's almost like you have to tap into those bubbles because
Yes.
your communication is so atomized. There's no a single conversation anymore, especially if the movie goes directed to Netflix and it's not in
Yes.
theaters.
And it weirdly
Fascinating.
was very popular in Latin America. I don't know if that's a Sandler thing or like a content thing, or I don't really understand, and no one ever explained it to me, but it like all of the social media about it was
I have a theory.
Central America. I'm interested what the theory is.
There is something about magic realism in Latin America.
Yeah,
Specifically, the 60s and 70s are a huge important part in all Latin American countries. Magic realism becomes kind of like the mainstream of the very highbrow writers of the time, Garcia Marquez and Cortázar Argentina. And so I think Latin Americans are very familiar with this idea of unexpected events, maybe magical appearances or supernatural ideas coexisting with like everyday life.
Yeah.
So when you watch a movie like that, I think in a DNA, and it's a theory, but it's a one theory, but in the DNA of how we consume culture, we accept that as a possibility. It's not like a what the fuck moment when the alien appears. It's more of like, of course, there's a giant, spoilers alert, there's a giant spider that's talking to Sandler.
Yes, there is. Yeah, it's not a spoiler. It's pretty early. He meets an alien, and then the rest of the movie is what happens with him and his alien friend.
Yeah,
I think you're really onto something. That was my sense. But you're sort of, when a film premieres just on a streamer, you do sort of have this like void of like, did people see it? Do they like it? Like there's kind of a vacuum as far as response. Whereas I think if you get theatrical, you at least can like know, are people buying tickets? Are the theaters full? It like at least permeates culture in a different way.
We have another segment called Only Good News. And it's very hard to find good news, but Helen, God bless her, she always finds something that she reads that is hopeful. I'm more of the dark side of the
I will try to bridge the gap.
You're going to bridge the gap, but she was listening to this podcast. I think, what is the name of this? The Town, about how a trend that we've seen, and it's something that we've seen from friends and people are talking about it in LA, the idea that you now as a creator or writer, director or writer should be putting things out. So basically, if I don't understand wrong, specifically go funding a pilot, let's say if you want to do a show, putting it on YouTube, getting metrics, and then with that data, trying to sell the project to distributors that will pay for the rest of the episodes, right? So prototyping, which is a culture of Silicon Valley in a way, right? The rapid prototyping or seed funding projects, but now applied to creation. And I have my own thinking about this, but because that's what I do. But how do you feel about this trend? Have you been exposed to it? Have you thought or toyed with the idea? What's the vibe there?
I think that this sort of feels like a natural extension of like the Hollywood ecosystem in the last few years, which has been, I think there are good things about this, right? Like I think it gives artists
good
freedom. I'm trying to focus on the good news part of it because I then have a kind of caveat. But the good news about it is it gives you freedom, right? And the easiest way to convince someone something is good, especially if it's original and different, is to make it. Because if it's original and different and on paper, it's a lot harder for people to know, like, do I believe that it will be good? Do I think it will be good? So I think like getting to make the thing does sort of make it kind of like undeniable. It's like it either is or is not good people do or don't like it. And so I think like that gives artists more power and then more control if you can go make it yourself and say like, it's good, people watch it. So do you want it now? That I think is good. The negative part I think to this is it offloads risk onto the artists, which is sort of what the whole trend of like, before you try to sell this movie, have you considered maybe like writing it as a book and then seeing if the book is successful? And if you can sell the book, then maybe someone options the book and lets you write the movie version of the book. Like this is this weird trend within Hollywood of like, how do I, the studio that pays for everything, take less risk on paying for something until I know it's really good and undeniably good. So I think like value judgment aside, this is the...
And good and bad measured in success, for sure. Of course.
Yes.
And that is the other element to it. Right?
This is the society we live in is like hyper-capitalist. And so you need to prove the value of the thing before anyone wants it. But like, I think the plus side is you can go make the thing. And if it's really good, you can then decide, do I even want to take the money from anybody else? Or can I find a way to just earn money from this without needing any of them? Which I think is very attainable in our current media ecosystem.
I'm with you. I think that the good news is that more people are trying this, because I do think that de-risking strategies, as you said before, sometimes are good to sell things. But most importantly, I think creating things without asking for permission in this industry is something that is very refreshing, and I practice, because as much as I play the game, I'm always trying to have something, and I know you do too by reading your newsletter, like trying to have something that is within my control.
Yeah.
Something that I know that I will be executing on, mainly because I'm an artist and I want to see things out and I want to have a dialogue with an audience. And it's like, if I keep waiting around, then it's never going to happen. And that usually shows up in the form of, I know you're doing a short film too right now. I want to ask you about that.
We'll talk about
But I think it happens in at least the form of a short film that you can then adapt. And I want to ask you about that and other things related. But the thing that people underestimate in this model is, of course, to connect with an audience, you have to have it first. And audiences don't come by very easily. I think it's very hard to build a following when you're an artist that is not doing performative arts. Right? When you're a writer, when you're a director, that takes years to create anything. To build an audience is extremely hard. So I think this is a great segue for me to ask you about your intuitions around building an audience directly, right? Because you're a professional writer, but you are also have, I follow you on TikTok, you post regularly, I read your newsletter, and that creates a connection. No, Chris, I love it. No, but like, listen, when you're a writer and you put things out, you probably feel weird about it. I'm here to tell you, I love the content. He's doing it.
Thank you.
Because it's good, and I know it feels like my friends will hate me and feel it's cringe. Well, I'm not your friend yet, but I think that's really helpful.
Yeah. No, that's really nice.
I love that you're doing it.
Tell
me about that.
I started writing this newsletter it's like a year and a half ago now. And it was part of that was wanting to like imbue anything I understood about the business to other people, because of everything I was saying at the top of the show, of like, I just don't think I knew when I started any of this stuff. And as I have gotten older, I think in the last year, I realized like, oh, I actually know a lot. Like when I started to have meetings with executives and I was asking questions that were sort of like stumping them sometimes, I was like, oh, I've actually worked in this job for a long time now. I maybe know some stuff. So partly it was to share what I knew, and partly it was sort of looking at the ecosystem that we exist within and being like, oh, I think that Twitter is going to go away, which it has since gone away. And that was sort of where I had put time and energy into having an audience, because I am a writer and it felt like a writerly format, at least a little bit. And I wanted to be able to like reach an audience still. And so I started the newsletter to try to do that, and have since started. I have a lot of friends, my friend Nick Curcio, who's a great writer, and we've met a bunch of times, I think because we followed each other online. And my friend Kristen Tepper, who is also a TikTok person, they have both been doing it much longer than me. And I was watching them sort of with both like impressed by them and a little bit like, oh, I could never do that. And I think getting to sort of be building an audience via just writing and do that while watching them force themselves to be on camera as writers, I was like, oh, there is an easier path to build a bigger audience than just by writing a weekly newsletter. And it is sort of like sharing more of yourself on camera and on microphone. I mean, Nico, you do it too. And it feels like a big hurdle to overcome. But I think it, as someone who wants to go direct a movie and wants to go, create a relationship with audiences, it felt very clear to me that doing that as early as possible would be the best thing for whatever movie I then go make, because I have, now worked on a couple films with studios and watched my wife work on films with distributors and gotten to see sort of firsthand how much they will and won't put effort into promoting the project that you have spent years of your life making. And so I sort of have watched that and been like, oh, it is up to me. It is only up to me. I am the only one who cares the most about me and my thing. And so I think I've just tried to get over not wanting to do it. And now I'm doing it. And yeah, I think you need to build an audience if you want to make stuff. That's the whole point of it. And we have an incredible tool in front of us to be able to do that. So I think it's important to do.
And you not only do it, but also it resonates with an audience, which has to be very cool because you actually are growing an audience, right? It feels that way for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. Yeah. And a part of having the newsletter is I sort of get to talk to people once a week, which is really interesting. They like hear what I'm doing. We have
You do that as like a meetup in Zoom.
Yeah, we have a monthly Zoom meeting where I get to hear what everybody who reads the newsletter is doing. It's very cool. It has become a little community, and that feels really neat. And yeah, people ask me, how's the thing you're writing? How's the movie you want to direct? Like it is very clearly has shown me like, oh, there is an invested, growing audience of people who care about what I want to make. And that is valuable as you keep making more art and growing your audience. You want those people to want to buy a ticket.
Especially in an age where we're at the whim of algorithms and whatever they want to do that week, having a captive audience through a newsletter or different hedging your bets in different channels. I think that's so important. Because when the time comes, as you said, like it's going to be very, very important to have people waiting for the project. And I do think that micro audiences are a lifeline for people who are creating things, because of course we want to put things out and reach to people. But I do think distribution is the thing that is getting the most difficult to do. I think, right? Especially when you have algorithms doing this arbitrage of what is being seen by whom and when and to what extent, right? So having the ability to tap into people who are waiting, then 300 people suddenly become an amount of people that are very important, for the project.
And I don't think you need a tremendously large audience to pay back the cost of making something if you make it smartly. If you're being really judicious about the cost of the thing you're making, you don't need a movie to be seen by millions of people. You need it to be seen by tens of thousands of people. And that's like really achievable, but it just means you're doing it all yourself or with a team of other people who are excited to do it all yourselves as a collective. And I just think like I've been really lucky and gotten to work within the big system of Hollywood, but that also means I get to see how it works and does not work and who it works for. And it doesn't work for us, the artists. It works for somebody else higher up. So
do you feel like there's almost a little bit of when you're an ambitious filmmaker that proved to be someone who could work very well within the system, is it like a little bit of an ego thing to let go and say, okay, at the same time, I'm going to keep an eye on self-distribution, I'm going to keep an eye on growing an audience? Is there an ego thing there? Back to what we were talking about before, like when you look at the careers of those people like PTA, like that's the way to do things, right? Like you want to be thinking about a movie for 2 years and then actually doing it and not juggling a million different things. But are you grappling with that question a little bit?
I don't feel it in an ego sense, but it's interesting. There is a business sense to it, right? Like I was really lucky to get to work on like studio films and as a writer pretty early in my career. Like I moved here and I wrote a film that became a Netflix film. I wrote a film that became a Searchlight film. And so when I then sort of called my agents and was like, and I want to go direct a movie, they were like, oh, uh, how big of a movie do you think we could get made for you? Like a big movie, right? And I was like, I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think it should be a very small movie because I've never made a movie before. So I think there's just sort of a like, they are different ecosystems. And when you've worked in one, it's not even an ego thing. It's just like, they don't actually overlap that much. You know, like independent film does not overlap a ton with like big studio filmmaking. There's a big gap and you're lucky to kind of jump from one to the other. I don't feel much ego about it. I don't know. I came up in theater. I would build the sets with my friends. I would hang the lights with my friends. The shoot I was talking about the other night, I was putting a ring light up because I was like, well, it's dark in here. Like, I don't have any ego about making the thing happen.
Hands on.
But I can see that would be challenging because you do get used to, and I think especially, the business side of things, people get used to like a certain level of filmmaking, and it's really hard to like move between layers, up or down.
100%.
Yeah.
So we have a last segment for you today, which is what are we watching? And what are we watching is basically checking in. Helen and I check in and tell each other what is it that we are spending our time and hard-earned dollars watching. It could be movies, it could be shows. I brought three. If you have any, I will start with you because maybe we have something you think that comes to mind. What are you watching, Colby?
I wrote about this in my newsletter just recently because I have become slow horses pilled. Like
Yes, and why does it? You were asking a very important question. I'm a big fan. Like I know my Holy Weird.
Yeah.
You're asking the question,
why is it good? Yeah.
Why is it good? And because it feels tropey when you
Yes.
watch it. At the same time, it's clearly very well done. The actors are incredible. That helps.
Yes.
But it feels tropey, and yet.
Yes.
It feels very well written.
It's very elevated
work.
Procedural TV. Yeah.
Okay.
And I think The Pit is similar. I really like The Pit, but I think that they both have this thing of we know exactly what kind of show we are, and we're going to deliver you exactly that kind of show, but we know that there's a certain way that thing is done, and we're going to try to do it in a slightly different way. And that sounds really straightforward, but it's very hard to do that. And I don't know. So that's my, like, I have binged all of Slow Horses because I had never seen it and I wanted to sort of like check in before the season. So my wife and I have watched all of Slow Horses in the last few weeks.
It happens to us with my wife. Like we suddenly saw that on Apple TV, whatever, and we were like, what is this? It has 3 seasons already.
Yeah.
And we watched and we could not stop. Like we started at the beginning and we ended up at the end, and really felt that those tropes of like the underdog and the cop that is an alcoholic, like we've seen that so many times, and yet like it hits a familiar place that when you get into it and it's done with good taste and so well written that those characters just work.
Yeah,
they do just work.
They are flawed characters, and I think to build a show around, what I like about Slow Horses is they built a show around the only characters we're going to be with are the flawed ones. Fundamentally, the show's about we are the screw ups within the intelligence service. So I think it just lets you have more fun. It lets you like root for these people. I think it shows people being really good at something and screwing up, and I think that's
the key. That's balance. I think it's like
really fun.
A character has almost a supernatural ability to work through stuff at the same time that is super challenged and flawed. I think
it's like a house, which like I was like that show. Those things work. We like that as an audience.
There's a show right now, and I know Helen wanted to talk about this. Task is kind of that idea of a very flawed character. And I was just describing it as almost like a family drama, but because you can't make those anymore, is wrapped in this pill of genre. Yeah. Which you can only really do on shows mostly because like that people don't swallow the pill in movies, but they would on a show where you can do this wrapper of an FBI show, but then the core of it is like a family drama that could be in the 70s if you strip out all the genre elements to it. I've been watching movies. I watched 3 movies. One that I loved so much and I had to catch up on. It's called Friendship by Andrew DeYoung. Friend with Tim Robinson.
Love
And
it.
Tim Robinson is one of my favorite comedians. I think it's a little bit misunderstood, but I think he does so well this idea of like augmenting the awkwardness of social relationships in the US that for me as a foreigner becomes so apparent. I think, I think Protestant Anglo-Saxon societies have this thing where like there's a facade of amicability, but it's so easily pierced because it's so. I don't want to bash on it because I enjoy people that are nice. There's something about American society, like American politeness, that I enjoy, and people hate it, especially in LA when people are trying like fake nice. I like fake nice because I do think that the way that we communicate, even in the most superficial way, I think it sets the tone. And when you don't have that, when people are hostile, you don't like it. Like there's a primordial reaction to it that is not nice, not pleasant. So I don't bash on nice, but it's so easily pierced by reality and awkwardness. And I think that Robinson does that very well. Like he exploits those little gaps between the social interactions and this is a celebration of that. I call it cringe core. This is like supreme cringe comedy, but not for everyone, right? This is very hard to take. But if you go through that experience, I think it's one of the most profound movies that I've seen this year. It's like the one that really makes a point.
It's also really beautiful. Yeah, I saw it.
Beautiful.
It's really a gorgeous looking movie. Like it's really impressive. It captures everything that Tim Robinson is good at and is not an idea that he created, which I think is so interesting. Yeah, I loved it. I'm so glad you're shouting it out because people missed it. They should go see it.
They should go see it, and I think it's like when you see the trailer, you think that you've seen the movie, but the movie takes you through places that you have not seen, and become very deep. Like the story itself, like the plot of the movie, takes you to some place to go like, oh shit, this is like an art house film. Like this, it's very funny and entertaining, but it resonates at a level that is very deep, I think.
Yes. There is something so magical about a film that you cannot at any moment say, here's what will happen next. And this is one of them. I never, ever could have told you, like, I know what's going on.
Then I had 2 more. So the other one I have is Him by Justin Tippin. Very much removed from this other one. It's with Tariq LaShawn and Marlo Wayans.
Yeah.
And I got to say, if I have to say something, because I went to a screening, if I have to say something good about the movie is that it's incredibly shot.
It looks cool. I've read some of the sort of like mixed response.
It looks cool is probably the way they pitch it.
Yeah.
It's like it's like if a Nike commercial had a baby with a music video.
Yeah.
And
fair enough.
And I think that when you are managing, and I'm a commercial director as well, so I do both, right? And when I'm switching my brain to narrative, something you learn very quickly is that the resources and things that you can apply to a commercial or a music video, things like that, are very tempting to apply on a narrative project. And so many times the style hurts the narrative. Narrative needs ebbs and flows, and it needs peaks and valleys. It needs contrast. You can't be cool all the time.
Yeah.
You know, that the directors we remember for being cool have such a great balance of that two things. And even the most like Kubrick or Tarantino, like people, you remember images on your head, but when you actually look into it, it's not a music video. It's not every time, every second of the film is that way. And this is, every second of the film is incredibly stylish. I think to the detriment of the story. And but I relate because it's tough. You get tempted by form is so beautiful and it's a narcotic, you know. Style it could become narcotized. Like you can be lost in form, and I think a movie gets lost in form. And then finally, because I'm preparing to see the PTA movie One Model After Another, which I haven't seen, but I've been seeing some. I missed the screen in the DGA with him and moderated by Spielberg, so I want to die. But, you know, I've been listening to interviews and I remembered how much he loves Robert Altman, and how much of an influence Altman was in his work. And I seen Altman's work, but I haven't seen everything. And so I went back and I started from the end. So I watched A Prairie Home Companion. Have you seen that movie?
I think I saw it when it came out and was not old enough to know or care what was going on.
You would not. No, I mean, listen. in all fairness, I think I don't
He
know
was
them
very
that well
old
to
at the
be fair.
time, right?
It's a swan song. But I was
Yeah.
like, what the fuck is this movie? Because I mean, it's lovely, right? The cast is incredible. But then reading about it, I learned that this movie is the last movie he will ever do. Is he's 81 years old. The movie he does this movie in 2000. He premieres the movie in 2006.
Right.
Dies 4 months later. He's so old and feeble at the time he does the movie that the studio forces him to get a backup director in case that he dies during the film.
Right.
And that shadow director is PTA. So Anderson comes, like, he already did Boogie Nights, he already did Magnolia, Punch Drunk. He's out of Punch Drunk Love.
Crazy.
He comes on set for this movie just to shadow and quietly sit in a corner in case that he's needed, and then Alman will remember him. And I think they gave him an Oscar, for a career Oscar, and he will say, "I only did this movie because PTA was with me." So I was like, oh, they actually were friends. And his wife is in the movie. What's her name? Like, she's amazing. Maya.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Rudolph has a beautiful role in the movie. And the movie's a weird movie about like a radio show. Is the last run of a radio show that is also a play. So it's some sort of format so people go to see this play that is a radio show with music. I don't know.
Are you familiar with the radio show? Is this a thing that you ever encountered prior? Prairie Home Companion? It was a radio show.
So tell me what it is, because it's a real radio show.
Yeah, this is such a can of worms. It's a real radio show that was on NPR for a long time, like public broadcasting, and it is this weird Garrison Keillor, who is now canceled. He wrote this whole sort of like universe of this world, of this sort of
Americana kind of
fake
thing.
American town, and it's sort of like every week the radio show would just sort of like check in on this fake town, and then it was performed live and on the radio. It's a very weird format to then make a movie out of.
There's no movie. There is the last show of this, the last performance of this show that you just described. Everybody knows that the show is ending. Nobody wants to accept it, or everybody's in denial. Like, nobody really talks about it in a way that feels kind of like realistic. And there's a angel walking around. That foreshadows the death of characters, and it's like nothing happens. Like, this is just a show of this thing, but you can tell that he's very good with actors, and everybody's having a great time. But it's a little bit of a swan song. Yeah. So I'm making my way back and going all the way to the 70s in the next month. So I'll keep reporting on Altman, because I really love his work, and I think I wish those movies with more complicated characters and an overlapping dialogue would exist today more. And
absolutely, yeah. He has so many movies. You're on a journey. I've also only seen a couple. Yeah, he's great though.
Colby, thank you so much for showing us your presence today, and gracing us with your presence today, and filling in for Helen.
Such a treat.
Helen, get better. We love.
Yes. I'm sad to miss you, Helen. I hope I did as good a job as you are.
We are establishing a new policy, which is returning guests. So, we got to put you on the list if you want to come back. Like, we would love to have you and just check in. What are you doing and what's going on with your life?
Anytime. I'd love it. I had a great time. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Thank you. See you soon.